Alarm switch is on. Here comes the throttle. Circuit breakers in. We have separation. Inboard and outboards are on. We're coming forward with the side stick. All looks good. Roger. I've got a blowout. Vapor 3. Get your pitch to 0. Pitch is out. I can't hold altitude. Correction. Alpha hold is off. Trip selectors emergency. Flight comm. I can't hold it. She's breaking up. She's breaking.
You're listening to CaveRadioBroadcasting.com. The words and opinions you are about to hear are of the hosts and do not reflect the management of CaveRadioBroadcasting.com.
I'm Howard. I'm going to be your host tonight. Dave is calling in from Parts Unknown. He's in the Witness Protection Program now. So he's going to be calling in a few minutes.
He's actually on right now.
Is this any better?
Yeah, that's much better.
On.
How you doing, Dave?
You guys sound good now, too.
How is life in Idaho?
Idaho?
Yeah, I told him you were in the
Idaho,
Witness,
Idaho.
Witness
I'm in
Protection
my own
Program.
private Idaho.
Oh, there you go. There you go.
Are we on air yet?
Yes,
we are. We are live.
Yes,
we are. All right. And Howard, you're the quarterback today.
Yep, I got it. So today we're going to try a little free form. We got a few predetermined topics we can talk about, but we're going to free form it. So let's start out and say good afternoon, and welcome to Down the Rabbit Hole. It's Thursday the 21st, 2016. It is a crappy day in Michigan. I'm Howard. I'll be joined by Dave D and Dave H.
Hello.
How you doing today, Kenny?
I'm good.
How you doing, DiBiase?
I'm doing good.
Awesome. So today's show is sponsored by.
I'm good too, by the way. In case you were interested,
I said something to you and you didn't say anything.
Dude, I'm just kidding.
Today's show is sponsored by InkOnPaperPrinting.com. I'll let anybody else chime in about how cool they are, but because I don't.
Very cool. I highly recommend them.
And as always, by Elder Care. Care your loved ones in their own home. ElderCareCares.com, or give them a call at 734-671-6518. Chriselle would love to take care of you. We've got a couple shout-outs, as always. It's AE911truth.org and IamTheFaceOfTruth.com, two organizations we've worked closely with that we have their full support, and we fully support. Great people over there. So, that's pretty much it for the stuff I have to do. Now I'll do the stuff I want to do. So what's up, guys?
Not much.
Nothing. Another day. It's raining.
Yeah.
You guys
Prince is dead.
Yeah,
So is
we
the
were
female
talking- that
wrestler
sucks.
China.
that so sucks, man.
Yeah, the female wrestler China died too, and then of course we all
she
got
died
news.
first, didn't she?
Yeah, and
Did
then I
she
just
die? When did she die?
she died this morning.
Okay, this is just too weird.
Yeah, and then I just found out as my gamer show was going on that the guy who actually created James Bond died.
Ian Fleming
Yeah.
I think so. I'm gonna have to double check on that.
or Broccoli?
I think it was
So
Broccoli.
here's what's weird. I don't know if you guys have noticed this, but it seems like yes, when someone famous dies, it's in the news, so we feel like it happens a lot. But let me ask you guys this: how many famous people are there, like household named people are there in the world? 10,000, maybe 5,000, 100,000. I mean, what do you guys think the number is?
Household names? I don't know. Probably not that many.
Okay, the guy I was thinking about is Guy Hamilton. He directed 4 James Bond films.
When someone's over, 75, and they buy it, like Maureen O'Hara did, that to me is not strange. But I was just looking at something, and in the last few months, okay, this is since the beginning of 2016, so this isn't even 4 full months. And I look at it like this. I live in a town that has about 10,000 people. And if there are, let's say, 10,000 famous people in the world, someone whose name I can throw out, like we've all heard of China. I think you're talking about the female wrestler.
Yeah.
Okay. We've obviously all heard of Prince. Then there's Glen Frey. And then another person that was right inside that Eagles band, Randy Meisner's wife. She was young. She died. David Bowie, Patty Duke, Gary Shandling, the dude from a Tribe Called Quest, Malik Taylor, I think was his name. Then there was this Playboy model named Katie May. She was 34. Maybe you guys have heard of Dave Mira, the BMX bike rider.
Dude, big time bummer, man.
41. If you watched football in the 80s or 90s, you probably remember Lawrence Phillips, who played at Nebraska, got in trouble in the NFL. Still, he was only in his 40s. Granted, he was probably on drugs, but Alan Rickman from Die Hard.
Yeah.
Yeah, big Alan Rickman.
Okay, these are all people that are, by and large, except for a couple of them, they're less than 50 or 60 years old. And I'm just thinking, like, I just rattled off 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. I just rattled off 14 names, and there's way more. And I'm just thinking, if 14 people under the age of, 50 or 60 died in my hometown in a span of 4 months, dude, they would have the health department here. They'd be checking the water. They would be going nuts trying to figure out what is going on, because statistically, it's ridiculous.
And the first thing they would check is the water. Something in the water.
Probably, I know, but how do you
Now they just
explain
ask
it
you if you've been
for
to Flint or not recently.
all these, how many famous musicians can there possibly be? And in that list were 4.
Yeah, and you forgot to mention probably the most important musician to me, the icon, Lemmy.
Of
from
course.
Motorhead.
Of course, Lemmy. But that was 2015, correct?
Lemmy.
Is that last year?
Still, it was
I know.
the end
I'm
of
just saying.
last year. I mean, it's still in the last few months.
Yeah, it was Christmas. Yeah.
Yeah, it was right around Christmas.
Poor Lemmy.
So how do you think people react to that? Do you think they shrug their shoulders and go, "Oh, yeah"? I mean, there's just you're trying to find something that's not there, or do you guys think it? If you're in that public spotlight, you're more susceptible to.
Well, one way to look at it is that we're all around the same age. We're all late 40s, and most of us, and
Kenny's still a youngster.
Kenny's still a youngster. Kenny's
31.
a youngster. But I think in the age that Dave and I grew up in, is it possible that media exploded, popularity exploded, and so many more people actually became what we call famous? And that's why we're noticing more and more death of famous people, because there were more famous people out of the 80s and 90s than in the past?
Maybe.
Well,
I don't know. Sheer numbers.
And on the gaming show, we were talking about this during one of our breaks. It's like what you guys saw was a creating of a legend. To me, now is a legend. Like Lemmy.
Right.
For
and
sure.
It's just
And Prince.
now society, they don't know nothing about that. To like them now, Lil Wayne's going to be a legend back then.
You're right. Right.
But it's like, yeah, it sucks. Like on my behalf, it sucks because I watched these people as I grew up, even though they were already big time already in the legend category.
Yeah, and I remember being young, and I don't remember exactly who it was, but I remember being younger, and some celebrity passed away, and my mom was just totally broken up, and I'm like, what? It's just blah blah blah,
Like Elvis.
I didn't get it, but now that I'm older, I understand. It's just like Kenny makes a great point. You develop a relationship with these people.
Yeah,
you grow up with them,
and you put toward them
Yep.
getting money in their pocket by seeing their movies, listening
Absolutely.
to buying their CDs, stuff like that. You're contributing to them to becoming that legend.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think the other aspect why it affects us too is because we're actually kind of getting close to that age.
Oh yeah.
So we're a little more like in tune with our own mortality at this
Yeah.
point. Like it's just around the corner, dude. Like we're already at the we're at the
I'm
apex.
freaking out. Like
you
a lot
know.
of kids I went to school with are passing away, and I'm just like, what the hell is going on?
Yeah,
I was
a
in the
lot
water
of
at Garden
young
City High
people.
School.
Yeah, a lot of young people are buying it, and and left and right, dude, left and right.
I know, and not just famous people. There have been some weird deaths around even my the area where I live, young people dying in the middle of their sleep. I know, Dave, I was talking to you about that husband of a friend of mine that just died in the middle of his sleep. Young guy. I mean, they don't even know what the cause was.
Yeah, I would say he was 45.
Yeah, he was in his mid to late 40s.
Yeah, way too young for that kind of nonsense.
And it feels like it's been going on forever, from James Dean to Jim Morrison to Janis Joplin to Jimi Hendrix to, granted, they were in the rock world. But when it comes to, I couldn't tell you a single Motorhead song. I wouldn't even know one if I heard it.
Don't say that out loud.
Hang on. But my point is I'm aware of Motorhead. I mean, the Lemmy, I've heard the dude. I probably have heard his songs. I just don't, they're not in my iPod, is what I'm trying to say.
Looks like Kenny's going to have to play one on break.
Actually, not a bad idea.
Please.
Screw Prince tonight.
Yeah, please
do a Prince one. Yeah, exactly.
The best thing about Lemmy was not only his, it was that he was like a music ambassador.
Yeah.
It was not
for metal.
Yeah, for all hard rock and metal, because the best thing, it started out with his music, and his music made him a celebrity. But man, that dude used his celebrity to be the bullshit police.
Yeah,
that's true.
Because Lemmy he cut to the core, and the dude always had, it didn't matter the topic. He was super intelligent, very well read. He could have an intelligent conversation on anything, and whatever he would say, you'd walk away going, damn.
Yeah.
That dude's in Motorhead?
Yeah.
Like the whole question, the big joke question is, who would win in a fight, Lemmy or God?
Ooh.
Lemmy is God.
Yeah, well.
You're saying that to the wrong three guys.
Yeah.
I know what you're trying to say.
I know.
But I'm going to chime in for God, and God would be kicking
I am going to
pretty much anyone's ass if he wants
I'm going
to.
to abstain and probably pay for it in the afterlife.
Yes, I don't know. That just, to me...
Well, I had one. Sorry to interrupt you, but I had one. This guy's he sells me my health insurance for my business, and I've been dealing with him for about 7-8 years. Good dude, and we develop. You know how it is with vendors. You develop a relationship. If they're cool, I pretty much only stick with cool vendors, and you develop relationships. You talk to them once a year. You do your renewals. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, this guy's probably in his mid-40s, had a wife in her late 30s, early 40s, beautiful family, 3 young kids. All of a sudden, another friend of mine calls me up and is like, dude, check out the newspaper. Is that our agent? Out of nowhere. She was like 39 years old. His wife just didn't wake up one day. Perfect health. And just out of nowhere.
Weird, man.
And I just talked to him the other day, finally, and they still don't know.
No idea.
Well, they're under autopsy. It takes like 16 weeks.
Yeah, it takes forever, especially if they're in Wayne County.
But, I mean, just tragic. I mean, 3 beautiful children. They were, their marriage was awesome. I mean, it's sad when anybody passes away, but, it really, really sent a shockwave to me because we would always talk about our families,
Yeah, 39 years old.
39.
It's ridiculous.
You guys know who Randy Quaid is, right?
Yeah.
Brother of Dennis Quaid.
Oh, yeah.
The funny one
Political
was in...
Is that the one that lost his cookies? And
Yeah.
Canadian
Saying how
citizen now.
Paramount
Now, it's funny
really
you say
screwed
that
him.
lost his cookies, because that's definitely the impression that, mainstream media has given us about him. But I was listening to a press conference he gave. This was maybe a year ago or 2 years ago. It was very recent. And there's nothing crazy about this guy. What he was talking about is he basically said, look, there is a conspiracy in Hollywood. There is this dark Hollywood. And he starts to go through these facts. He's like, do you not find it strange that... And he lists tons of people in Hollywood that he's like, these people supposedly die of drug overdoses and suicides and freak car accidents and airplane accidents. And he goes, doesn't the general public understand that there is more going on here than just randomness in life? And he seemed to, it was like there was something else on the tip of his tongue. He got the lawyer that he hired, and this is why, he hired a lawyer, and then the lawyer apparently was part of this dark Hollywood cabal, which wouldn't surprise me. There's certainly evil forces inside of Hollywood. There's no doubt about that. And we all recognize, at least for us, that organized evil is very real. And it's hard for people sometimes to come out and say, again, like we've talked about before, say words like devil and evil and Satan or whatever like that. But that's what like it felt like he was trying to say, but getting the people listening to his press conference to go look into it for themselves. And the next thing I know, yes, that's the impression. Everyone that's out there trying to expose the truth about something, and whether it's Jesse Ventura, Randy Quaid, Rosie O'Donnell, Charlie Sheen, I could go through a lot of these guys. We all tend to, what's the impression of all the people I just talked about? Kind of a little bit wacko, a little bit off.
Yeah, nuts.
Yeah, I think generally speaking, that's true.
But are they really nuts, or is that the way they're portrayed because they're actually onto something?
Yeah, I just saw a picture of Randy Quaid, and he looked like Santa Claus all of a sudden. So I thought that was
that
odd.
YouTube video's pretty interesting.
That's all. I don't know what he said, but
I mean, I think he's right, like Hooper says, but you know, I have a hard time. He comes off as like completely insane now.
I don't know. I haven't heard any.
Did you see the video?
I just saw a picture of him, and I'm like, is that really?
No, he's like.
He looks like Santa Claus now.
There was an interview I read about him in Vanity Fair when I first heard about this, and he's like, it's like him and his wife, I believe,
right?
Who Dennis Quaid basically blames all the stuff on. He says it's her, and they're like living out of their car.
Yeah,
Canada.
I don't know. He got arrested for squatting in his former property or something like that.
Right, because the lawyer supposedly swindled him out of all his money.
Something, I don't know.
Yeah.
But if he's saying that Hollywood is dark,
Rupert Murdoch,
then I'm into that because that's absolutely true.
Yeah, so you think little things we take for granted, like you just looked up a picture, obviously, online while we were talking. And what's the picture that, I mean, he's been in a lot of stuff where he doesn't look like a crazy Santa Claus. I mean, why is that one of the first, I'm guessing, why is that one of the first pictures you saw?
I saw that when it came out in the news that they got him in Canada. This was months and months ago now. Maybe like last year, right? When that came out.
Yeah, last fall.
Like last fall. So that I just saw that,
He's actually got a YouTube channel called Evil Quaid.
Oh, really?
Or Evie Quaid.
Yeah, isn't the lady Evie?
Yeah.
The wife?
I found the videos.
I'll have to check those out.
You know, someone else that is in Hollywood that kind of, because as soon as you start doing this, you kind of get thrown to the side was, do you guys remember Tila Tequila?
Oh, yeah, dude. She's
beautiful.
She's come out with some stuff.
I know the name.
Big time. Yeah, she was the one that, what show did she do? But she
it was MTV. It was like her own dating show.
She's got a whole list
reality shows somewhere along the way.
She's got a whole list of YouTube videos that she does, like basically calling them out, like the Illuminati this and Hollywood this and music industry that. It's pretty. I've watched some of them. And
like she's got guts because all the things she talks about are things that, I don't go trust in Tila Tequila or would I ever trust any one source, but Ted Gunderson, FBI, Russ Dizdar, who both those guys we talked about last week, they totally dovetail with what she's saying. She's an insider talking about, look, man, these people, like, they perform, like, child sacrificial rituals. This is really happening.
Yeah. And
there is evil out there, and if you don't sleep with a director, you're not getting in, and you've got to basically sell your soul to become a household name, is the way she made it sound. And I don't know, I just don't think that's good for your career with the fan base, nor with the powers that be. So why would someone do it?
You're not going to get a movie part by saying those things.
Right. So what's the motivation, do you think? Do you think it's because they're crazy, they're trying to get attention, or do you think they're actually being courageous and trying to be honest?
I tend to believe it's maybe like what we're doing. I mean, it's a matter of just being courageous and kind of not really giving a crap anymore and wanting to expose things for what they are. I'm not vouching for Tila Tequila by any means, but I mean, if she witnessed some of these things and she's trying to get it out there, she's obviously not getting famous from that. She got famous from whatever porn or whatever else she did, but
having a great body.
Yeah,
And
that kind of stuff.
Well, the Randy Quaid thing, to me, adds air of legitimacy because he is someone who is extremely established, very well respected, highly regarded actor. And, Tia Tequila, and again, this may be that programming I'm still trying to break, but who she is and who she was and where she's at, could it just be that she's lost her 15 minutes of fame and she's trying to remain in the spotlight?
That could be, but it's YouTube. When she's not on TV.
Yeah, I know,
it.
but when it's a B actor or actress, I tend to give it less legitimacy if they don't have really supported facts where like a lot of people are saying the same thing and they're coming out. But the one that actually, as crazy as it sounds and as crazy as the video is Randy Quaid actually gets to me. Because this guy was so well respected and such a highly regarded actor, and basically because of these supposed star whackers, and him going underground to hide from them, the guy's basically turned his life upside down. So he's either completely
turned
insane,
it upside down,
right?
I don't think I think when you say someone has gone crazy, it's dismissive. And if you look at the history of Hollywood, this has been going on. Like I was watching this interview with Anton LaVey, who was the founder of what is it? The Satanic Church?
Church of Satan. Yes.
Thank you. And he's talking about how Jane Mansfield, whose daughter is Mariska Hargitay, we know her from Law and Order. And so he's talking about how Jane Mansfield's a big follower, and she was getting involved in this dark Hollywood, and they were teaching her how to curse people and do spells and using these like demonic powers for gain. And somewhere along the way, there's always a sacrifice. That's why so many Hollywood folks, this is Anton LaVey talking now, this is already old, and if you flash forward, it's still going on. They all have a child that at some point needs to get sacrificed. I know this sounds just so morbid, but it's happened to like John Travolta, and it's happened with all of them. And in Jane Mansfield's case, when you're messing with these dark forces, I mean, do you guys know how she died?
No.
I do not remember.
Wasn't it a car accident or something?
Freak car accident
That's
in
right.
which she was beheaded.
Yeah, it was like a truck. She ran into a semi-truck, or it ran into her or something. Is that right?
That's the story.
Right. But she was beheaded. I remember. My mom told me the story, actually.
So then you go back and you listen to what Ted Gunderson, who worked at the FBI for 30-plus years, he was head of the Los Angeles office, and he was in charge of interstate homicides, murders that cross state borders. And he basically starts seeing this trend where he's like, wait a minute, the vast majority of these deaths that the mainstream media present as accidents or suicides or randomness, they have this satanic ritual element. I mean, it's all over the crime scene. So he's noticing this. He was also investigating, one of his responsibilities was missing children, because we have databases for everything, and we can track anything, but we don't seem to. Do you ever hear a number of how many children go missing in this country every year? I mean, we see pictures on milk cans and milk cartons, etc. And Ted Gunderson basically said, these kids are taken, and they're ultimately used in demonic sacrifices amongst covens all over the United States. This is an FBI guy saying this, and you just listen to him. He's not crazy. He doesn't see something that's not there. I just think he's, again, one of those guys that's out there saying, look, there is something more going on here, and it definitely has infiltrated Hollywood a long time ago. And then that dovetails even further with Russ Dizdar, who become like a little bit of a hero of mine lately, and he spent 30 years sending undercover, essentially agents, into covens and satanic ritual groups, and the intel that he has gotten completely corroborates what Tila Tequila and Randy Quaid and all of these guys, Anton LaVey, they're all saying it. It's like it's not even a secret, but again, we tend to ignore. That's, I guess, one of the bylines of the show. So I just think there's something more to that, and I don't know. What do you guys think about that?
Well, to answer your question, I just Googled it real quick. It says that roughly 800,000 kids go missing each year in the United States.
All right.
What?
800,000.
Where is that from?
Google.
I'd actually heard it was around 1 million, so that number sounds right to me.
I mean, that's just unbelievable.
And then if you Google what are the days when that happens, it's solstices, it's Devil's Night, Halloween. They're like, it's these demonic evenings, these demonic inspired nights that are important to the, I'll call them the dark side, whatever.
That's a staggering number.
Yeah, that's
like the whole population of the city of Detroit goes missing every year.
Yeah. I never
in child form. That's unreal.
So,
I'm sure some of them are found.
And that's
some
according
of them,
to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children.
Oh my God!
I'd say they have to pretty much be the authority on that, huh?
Well, that's what they do. That's a staggering 800,000.
That's got to be what? 5 to 10 times the number I would have come up off.
Yeah, I was thinking like 50 grand, right? 50,000.
Yeah, I was thinking 50,000.
Wow. Now I was figuring about 30 to 50,000, but 800,000. It's almost 1 million kids.
How much press does that get? Versus
obviously not enough.
That's the first time
a random shooter that goes.
Well,
so they're trying to obviously get guns out of our hands, and there's probably a random shooting every couple months these days in this country. But by those statistics, there's almost 50,000 kids per month.
Yeah, that's
being taken. Where's the news article on that? How does that not get attention? These are our children.
Right. How many
guns are the big that's where the quote unquote real future safety of America is we got to get the guns out of the hands of the people. Yeah, right.
Yeah, that number blows my mind.
I'm still kind of shocked. My jaw's on the table. I can't believe that is a staggering number. And then
there's zero. There's zero press on that.
Well, no one's saying, hey, by the way, there's this kind of thing going on.
I mean, what do we get an Amber Alert? Every 6 months there's an Amber Alert?
Yeah, well, even if it was every day for one kid, that still doesn't even nearly cover that kind
According to the BBC, it's a kid goes missing every 90 seconds.
What? This is something we got to look into deeper, man. I never heard these numbers before. That's really
I'm blown away.
That's really mind-boggling because it's a really good point. Why isn't this? You would think there's like a phenomenon going on. Like where are all these kids? Where are they?
Well,
where are the 800,000 people, whether they're small or not? Where are they?
Kids survive.
Yeah, but where are they at?
This is a rumor. This is not a fact. I'm just going to say this as a rumor. But inside of the circles we travel in, a lot of people talk about there are these underground prisons where a lot of these kids are kept until they're used for a child sacrifice. And if you've ever heard the name Paul Bonacci, have you guys ever heard that name?
No.
Not just you guys, but our listeners, look into that story. It had to do with the SNL scandal that happened in the early 90s. And here again, bankers, the Illuminati and Bohemian Grove. He was taken to Bohemian Grove as a kid, like as a captive. He saw several other kids murdered. He even mentioned our current president. And this is where he loses in a lot of ways. A lot of people just dismiss him because when you say, oh, our president was involved in this kind of stuff, but that's something that I actually feel relatively secure in, that our world leaders are involved in these types of things. It's also written in the Bible that the kings of the world in the last days, they would all be in, or most of them would be part of this evil cabal, and they would be practicing child sacrifice. So Paul Bonacci was a witness to, and I forgot the kid's name, another kid that had been taken. And the mother of the kid that had been taken, I mean, she went crazy looking for him. She was wondering why the local police weren't doing their job. They weren't following up on leads. That she essentially conducted her own investigation from her own pocket because the surrounding police chiefs just didn't want to make a big deal of it. Flash forward about a decade into her investigation, and you need to hear this story from her. All you need to do is YouTube or Google Paul Bonacci. And there's 2 C's in that,
Sure,
Bonacci.
Could it be Paul
CCIO,
Bonacci?
I believe. And what this mother ended up discovering was effing frightening. And that's that the police chiefs were actually trying to squelch her, trying to shut her up, because they didn't want her to expose what was going on, because they were actually a part of it. And the biggest shocker of that entire story was that her own husband, the father of this 12-year-old kid who was abducted while on his paper route, he is the one that set it up. And that was his way of offering up his child for a ritual sacrifice so that he could advance in his career. And that was the quote-unquote deal that he had cut with the devil. Here's another woman, said, just a regular woman who lost a child, and discovering some of the most shocking evidence ever. But it led to the Bohemian Grove, to where this witness to her son's, now it's believed her son actually popped up 2 decades later as a press officer inside of the White House. And we all remember, maybe we don't remember, but if you remember the SNL scandal, do you remember those stories that had linked Bush and Reagan to homosexuality with young boys in the White House? Does that ring a bell to you guys?
No, I do not remember that.
Google it as we speak. There were a bunch of articles that came out saying that, hey, there's some weird stuff going on at the White House. And then before you know it, the story is swept under the rug. And it's only told by people like the mother of one of those very kids that got caught up in this child trafficking ring. And it's more than just some dude on Miami Vice trying to make a little extra money. Like, it's organized evil. It's just another one of the many ways you can actually see the imprint, the fingerprint of the enemy of Jesus on this earth, working live right now, hidden, just like it was predicted he would be. Scary until you tap into the power of God, and once you get it, you know that they can't harm you anymore unless you let them. But it's uncomfortable stuff to even talk about. It's just not it's not a party. We're not talking about
it's not a party.
keks and hookers, which was a way better topic for me before, but I don't know.
Yeah, well, the human trafficking thing is actually much bigger than people think. And that this probably plays into that, right? Because most of these people that are involved in this as victims are probably underage people, right? Kids, young girls, etc. And I went to the store to buy a Bible for my daughter for her birthday or something like this. But there was people there that were involved in this group that fights human trafficking. And I just struck up a conversation with the guy, and he was telling me that the capital of human trafficking in the U.S. It's not where you might think. It's not along like the U.S.-Mexico border. It's not, it's actually right here in Metro Detroit.
Really?
Yeah. Toledo also. There's actually the 275 corridor, down through, Plymouth, Canton, Livonia area down there. That area is actually like the capital of human trafficking. More of it goes on, I think, probably because of the how close we are to the Great Lakes, the waterways, the Detroit River. That freeway is just like, you can get to any freeway from there.
Yeah.
But he said most of the activity, he said it's right down the street right here. And this goes on right underneath our noses, and you don't even realize that this is happening. But there literally are people being bought and sold. It's human trafficking. That's what this is. And this is 2016. This isn't like, 1640,
Yeah, right.
And wood ships and all this nonsense. It's actually going on right now. And obviously at a number that's more staggering than anyone probably even thinks. They think this is an issue for like, North Africa or, this is, over there. But no, it's going on right in our backyard. And it's actually an active coalition that is fighting this. And apparently they can't rely on solely law enforcement, not trying to say law enforcement isn't doing their job, just saying that the problem is so big that they seem to... It's like hunger, right? I mean, you have to try to... there's actually an organization collecting money and actively fighting this stuff. It's insane to even think that this is going on right here while our kids go to school and we go to work and everything's just honky-dory.
How many times do you drive past 275 in a week?
All the time. But it's right there. And Toledo, I guess, is a big hub for it. It's just odd. It's just so strange that this is just right here.
Wow, Detroit.
And you don't, well, I mean, you'd think, crime isn't such a stranger to us here, but that to me is just a little bit different.
Well, it's completely different because I wouldn't think that when you say human trafficking, and I could be wrong, I'll have to do some more research on it, but when you talk about human trafficking, I think international.
Well, that's obviously what's going on. I mean, it could be...
And is it because of our proximity to Canada? But I don't think anybody's smuggling Canadians in.
No, but it may be a passway through, and like waterways.
Yeah.
You can get to the ocean from the Detroit River. So.
But it surprises me because I remember when they were doing all the border stuff, and I'm sure they've shorted up a little bit. But I remember post 9/11, and I've personally gone through the border between Ottawa and upstate New York, and there is 50 times the security at the Detroit-Windsor border.
It's the busiest one, that's why.
Yeah, then there is, I mean, you could probably sneak a 747 across the border if you want to go from Ottawa to upstate New York.
Yeah, no, Windsor is actually the busiest crossing in the whole U.S., but...
Busiest legal crossing.
Well, yeah, okay. Yeah, the other ones actually aren't crossings, right? There's no border right there in that spot.
Right. Technically, they're swimming.
It's a bad joke, but I don't know. Just for me, the idea of human trafficking is there's just an extra.
Well, there's something sinister.
Well,
to
it's more. It's just that much more heinous.
Oh, absolutely.
Just is. It just. I mean, it's not like the typical robbery and the violent crimes that are horrible. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to minimize it, but it's just when you hear human trafficking and you know darn well that it's kids that are involved, it's so utterly evil that it's hard to even fathom.
That's a special level of evil.
It's really something, man.
Yeah,
really twisted stuff.
If those numbers are true, why is it that, so you said you guys were surprised at this, which, I've been as well. Now, are you surprised because of the type of crime that it is, because it seems so outside of human nature? Or are you surprised because you never hear the media talk about it, so it kind of caught you off guard that it was such a big deal?
I'm surprised because I never hear the media talk about it. You would think if practically the better part of 1 million kids are missing each year, that it would be a regular feature on something.
Well, that's what shocks me about it is the sheer number.
Yeah, I mean, that's unbelievable.
There's 350 million on a good day here, right, in the whole nation. So do the math on that.
2% of the population?
Every year, This is, you know what I'm saying? So, and again, you don't hear like, okay.
And that's, feel free to do your own research.
Well, that's just what they said.
That's without in-depth. No, I'm just saying
Yeah.
to everybody else, it's without in-depth research. It was a quick Google.
Yeah,
but-
the Center for Missing and Exploited Children
Yeah,
says
pretty much
that 800,000 kids go missing every year. So we take that at face value. Even if it's half that,
yeah.
it's no less staggering. I mean, it's just unbelievable
yeah.
to me and this is just like, oh, everything's, we're reporting on the weather and what what the animal shelter's doing, and it's nonsense. I mean, what is going
here's
on?
the funny cat video of the week.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And sometimes local news, they do report on, there was a shooting in south side of Detroit, and some dude shot a drive-by, and they make it sound like, oh my God, that is the story. That is such a big problem. But numbers-wise, compared to, like, I think the city of Chicago last year had like 50 murders in it. But if we apply the size of Chicago to this pool of 800,000 in the United States, I'm going to guess that there were 2,000 children abducted.
Yeah, I don't think
area. How the hell is that not on the news?
I think there was probably 50 murders in September in Chicago, not all year. There's a lot more than
So you
that.
could be right.
That was on a weekend.
I'm going to actually look that up real quick. I know Detroit was the capital of the murder world there for a while.
Well,
Yeah, it's been a while. They're kind of cleaning it up a bit.
well, the more people leave, the less people there are to kill.
That's statistically, you're correct. So I'm just sitting here on my calculator for the heck of it. So that's 50 states, right?
Right.
We haven't added any last time I checked.
I got 490 for 2015 in Chicago.
Yeah, I was going to say there's 10 times that, but that
All
sounds
right,
about
so if
right.
you got 50 states, you divide that into 800,000
yeah, so you get 16,000 kids per state per year, and then if you divide that by
Now, half the
That's-
population of Illinois lives in the metro Chicago area.
well, you're looking at just by state, you're looking at on average, right, based on those numbers, about 44 kids go missing in every state every single day.
Yeah.
I mean, that 44, a whole classroom
Yeah.
of kids is just gone every year from every state, and you don't hear about it.
So then you've got guys like RUSS DIZDAR they're saying, he goes, look, my research, it blows even me away to this day, and I've been in it for 30 years. This is him talking. And he's like, when I tabulate essentially the vastness, the size of this, these people that are literally in some type of evil organization, like it's, sometimes they're covens or they have lots of different little forms, but they have a few common principles, which is apparently child sacrifice being like a big it brings these guys together in some way on these particular dates. Now, he never talked about the missing children aspect. He would just talk about how the number of these covens, these groups, is so vast that he thinks in the United States we're talking about tens of millions of people. I mean, a large percentage of the population that's actually involved in this, and these are our teachers and principals and police officers and neighbors, and you'd never, in the Paul Bonacci case, it was her own husband, and she didn't even know it. You know what I'm saying?
No, yeah, that's you're diving right into straight up prophecy now.
How do we allow ourselves to get here?
I think by not listening. It's not like we haven't been warned for 2,000 years plus.
Yeah, we're a product of our environment. I mean, they have they've desensitized us. They have programmed us to think one way. You get used to the atrocities that are going on, and they become less atrocious. And you just move on to the next thing. You get so caught up in your life.
Yeah, I think that it's but this is not because the scope of it is larger than it was simply because, like you said, of sheer numbers. There's just more people now. But I don't think, other than the fact that they didn't have cell phones and computers and cars and all that, the nature of what we're talking about hasn't changed ever. Child sacrifice was going on nationally in many instances in the past. Openly, it was actually the mainstay of their society, and they were obviously judged accordingly because they're not around anymore.
Well, that was the main identifier of the demonic kingdoms of history, from like the Aztecs to the Incas to the Egyptians, all involved in heavy child sacrifice. And if you are reading the Old Testament, there's not a page. It's hard to get several pages without at least some mention of how the people of the day would sacrifice their children to Baal.
Well, ancient Israel fell into it.
That just
that's how crazy it is.
So RUSS DIZDAR, who, and again, I mention him a lot, but there's several people that work in this area, and that's someone. Look him up, folks. DIZDAR is the last name. Or Ted Gunderson. They'll kind of lead you to the same place. But RUSS DIZDAR specifically followed the modern-day occult, which he said was it was underground for most of the Dark Ages up through the early 1900s. And he said it from his own research. Now, my own research totally corroborates this from completely different sources. But you will have heard this theme on our show before. And that's that occultism, which is essentially the worship of demons, the gods, small g, of the Bible. And it came back out into the public through the Nazis in the late 1920s, early 1930s, up through the end of World War II. And the whole Lebensborn project, which, if you remember, was trying to genetically alter the people to fit with what RUSS DIZDAR believes is this Nephilim DNA. And Nephilim, right from Genesis, the first book in the Bible, were the offspring of fallen angels who had mated with human women, which seems pretty unbelievable if you get your education from our school system and television. But once you actually start to look into it, you realize, holy cow, there really is something to this. There's giant skeletons all over the place. And he talked about how the real story of the Nazis that you never see on the History Channel, for instance, which sports a red sideways pyramid, just like the pyramid on the back of our dollar in their logo. He talked about how the Nazis never lost the war, which I completely concur with. They did not. Germany lost the war, but the Nazis were saved. Minus they threw 21 almost nameless guys at the Nuremberg trial. You're going to try 21 mid-level managers, and that quote unquote is the cleansing of the Nazi party, please. And the real story of the Nazis was their hyper-advanced science when it came to genetic manipulation and doing things like splitting personalities and creating these MPDs, multiple personality disorder types, which can, these are the guys that we spoke about a few weeks ago, these guys that can be programmed literally to go on a shooting spree and then kill themselves or forget that they were involved in it. And he noted that these experiments exploded under the occult-driven Nazis. And all of these Lebensborn kids, which were basically these fertile women that were kept in essentially, call girl houses, certain troops would come back from the front, and if they had certain criteria, they could go try and reproduce a kid with this woman, and the kid would become the property of the Nazi state. And we don't really know what happened to all of these kids, except we do know the Nazi intelligence agency, which was behind this, the SS and the Gestapo being its arm, came over and became our Central Intelligence Agency, which to this day, according to Ted Gunderson of the FBI, goes out of their way to keep secret all of this evil / child sacrifice, child slavery story. I mean, it's just they're unaware of it in this country, and it's our own Central Intelligence Agency with its roots in the Nazi occult. So around the 1960s, and this is Russ Dizdar's research, and I always say, go figure this stuff out on your own. That's around the time that all of these socially programmed, these MK, the programs that later would be known as MK Ultra and Monarch programming, where you can program secret agents like Jason Bourne, for instance. But he said that by the time we hit the late 60s, we're now 25 years out of the end of World War II. The Lebensborn kids, and this was a big program up through about 1941, and I'm sure it continued on through the war, but documentaries will talk about how it went up through 41. So if you're a 4 or 5-year-old kid at the end of World War II, you're about 30 years old in 1965 to 1970, give or take, that. And he goes, if you'll notice, that's when this brand new type of evil started hitting Earth, hitting our society, because he claims it was not around in pre-World War II days. And I have scoured newspaper headlines going back to the 1900s, and I, by and large, believe it. I mean, the amount of stories like this are very few and far between. Then all of a sudden, we start having the Charles Mansons of the world, and the Zodiac killer in San Francisco, and the Jim Jones in Guyana in South America, and all of these seemingly demonic related types of senseless evil murdering. It begins, and it starts to then continues proliferating to the fact where it's like we almost don't even notice it anymore. And he goes, and his research had brought him to the point where he interviewed several of these, what he would call demonized. He doesn't like the term possessed, because possessed implies all or nothing, and it makes us think of the Exorcist movie with the chick's head spinning around. And he said the reality is most people in America, whether they realize it or not, are demonized in some way. Like that is, there is, in some cases, it's a very small part of them, even Christians. In other cases, there are people that are just essentially given to darkness, and they're completely possessed, and that's a lot of our... He was behind the stage at a Marilyn Manson concert and said this guy literally, the demons did the show. Marilyn Manson just provided the body. People say the same thing about Katy Perry and Beyonce, too. I don't want to get too far off subject with that. But he said basically what happened is you've got, by the end of the 1960s, the first generation of these programmed psychopaths hit the culture all over the world, because the Germans went everywhere. They went to the U.S., they went to Argentina, they went to Russia, they went to Africa, they went into India, they went into England. They spread everywhere, and all of these programs continued. It continued at the KGB, which was the other half of the Nazi intelligence service. And by Russ Dizdar's estimates, he believes there are today, worldwide, about 80 million with an M, programmed killers, all along the lines of a Charles Manson or a Virginia Tech shooter. They're all waiting to be essentially ignited, waiting to be activated, because this program has been so far-reaching, and he said it's beyond overwhelming. And now you've got the Lebensborn kids, the ones born in the early 40s, late 30s, that out of that program, they're coming up on 70-something, 75 years old. Well, they've got their own children in it and their own grandchildren in it. And if you spread out the family, you know how populations can grow quickly. That's where he comes up with his estimate that we are dealing with massive numbers. Germany alone, in the Nazis, 500,000 children were born in that program. That we know.
Yeah, it says they had Lebensborn clinics in France, Belgium, the Netherlands, Poland, and Luxembourg as well. So, I mean, they weren't just doing this in Germany. They were doing it all over Europe, surrounding Germany.
Yeah, I mean, it could be argued that they were trying to do that globally.
That was the idea.
That was
the
plan.
Yeah. And another interesting side note, Annie Fried Lingstadt. Does that name ring a bell for anybody?
No.
Does not.
She is a Lebensborn child, and she was one of the members of, she was one of the A's in ABBA.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, there is a way to, other than the number of kids born. I remember RUSS DIZDAR talking about this too, is that if you look at it, something else you can quantify is pre-Nazi occupied Germany / Europe, right? Right before they came to power, Adolf Hitler, etc. There was an absolute explosion in published occult literature. The most ever in history. And the only other thing that come close and even surpassed it was the amount of occult literature that was published in the United States during the 1960s. It's almost like it was in two phases. They had this big explosion of occult literature, just like books you can buy, magazines, all talking about, seances and Ouija boards and stuff like that. The curiosity was pre-World War II Germany, and then, that happened, the Holocaust, all that, etc. And then we went through even, you could go into China during the 50s, on and on, and things that happened in Vietnam and Korea, etc. And then they had this another big explosion of occult literature that was printed in the 1960s in the U.S. And now it's like phase 2. It's almost like now the violence is even worse.
Yeah. That's an excellent point. Well, you know what? We're gonna take a quick break here. Kenny says we got some bills to pay, so we'll be back in a couple minutes.
Yeah, you can YouTube it and check it
out.
out.
Because that's a conspiracy you need to look into.
Yeah, screw all this other stuff. You don't know Motorhead.
Yeah, you don't know Motorhead, and you need to know Motorhead.
All right, I will.
So we're back. Let's pick up where we left off. Dave was bringing up some really interesting facts about the explosion.
Oh yeah,
the second explosion of cult-based literature and propaganda, which happened in the United States in the 60s.
Yeah, which is interesting because if you think about it, I was born in 74. You were born in
66.
66. So there's a little bit of a stagger there. But if you remember, at least for me anyway, especially being, and this isn't a dig on metal because I love metal, but if you were in that kind of, those circles, there was always kind of a satanic Bible within reach,
absolutely.
or a Ouija board in the closet,
Absolutely.
or somebody trying to levitate, or something. There was goat heads on the tree by the campfire pit. I mean, it was really kind of like a mainstream. They were sucking kids into it.
Yep,
absolutely going on.
Absolutely. I have mentioned this. I've mentioned this before in conversation with you guys. When I first started getting into real bands, when I was getting into real original bands, when I was like 18, 19 years old, almost immediately, one of the guys that pulled me in, he was a self-professed satanic priest.
Oh, boy.
And, he was just a blast to hang out with. I knew him from another band. And then the second he gets me in his band, he's throwing all this Satan music at me. And, you got here, have the Satanic Bible, read this, read that, do all this. No, you should consider, giving your life to Satan. It's like, what? Are you kidding me?
Well, I lived it. I was in that arena for a while. And it was, I think, is looking at this whole thing and a lot of people maybe don't make the connection that we do, that this actually probably started in Europe pre-World War II. This real explosion,
right.
like where it's really like, now it's the attack is on, right? And this whole thing, like in our childhood and our high school days, that time period was really on the coattails of what started in the 60s, like with the whole Aleister Crowley kind of guys, right. And the whole acid thing and all the stuff that was going on, was actually not necessarily about freedom or peace or any of the monikers that were used. It was actually just demonic. It was just satanic and evil.
Right. Well, the whole intent is to separate you from the morality that is preached in the Bible. The whole edict is, do what you want, do what thou wilt.
Yes. Do it. So go ahead. Do it. It's fine. It's free.
Cool.
It's
hey,
fine.
You want to do it? Go ahead. Do it.
The squares, right? The squares. They're just judging. That whole thing. And
if the Bible is that if that's the morality we're supposed to follow, and there's definitely like an inner battle inside of myself because the morality of the Bible is very, very, very different than the morality of mainstream media. Now, I'm not making any judgments on anyone. But if you guys watch ESPN, you probably know Curt Schilling, who was a pitcher for a bunch of teams, including the Boston Red Sox, and was an analyst on ESPN, made an almost innocuous, he just reposted a transgender meme about confusion over which bathroom a guy's supposed to use, who's a transgender. So he loses his job, and the press release out of ESPN this week was, we're an inclusive media network. We recognize gays, lesbians, transgenders, hermaphrodites, transvestites. They're all a little bit we're all one people. We're all under one. That was their stamp of approval on this. And I don't think Curt Schilling is necessarily either a Christian or a non-Christian, but this is how the mainstream media portrays the morality of the Bible is very different than, say, what I read in that ESPN press release. Again, I'm not making judgments.
No, and I think that's a misconception by pretty much everybody, that if you're of the opinion or of the, say, moral fabric, right, that is represented in the Bible, then you are somehow judging or somehow not accepting of anybody, or a bigot or a hater or all these things. So it's kind of odd that I didn't read that or see that, but what I got out of what you just said is when they say they're inclusive, they're actually saying they're exclusive.
Right.
It's the opposite, because this guy's not allowed to think anything they don't agree with.
Right.
Well, exactly. That's the message it sends. And it was funny because that was another prophecy that said in the last days, like, we would literally become like Sodom and Gomorrah, these cities that were destroyed because of in those city specific cases, because of the acceptance of homosexuality. And here you've got literally the day that the Supreme Court decides. We just last year we had a huge Supreme Court case, and normally with Supreme Court cases, you don't know which way it's going to go. You don't. But the day that the decision came down, tons of companies out of the Fortune 500 came out with rainbow logos. The White House was even lit.
As a rainbow.
In rainbow color. Now, if you're gonna put up, like, I've run a business before where you have to arrange stuff. That basically meant someone at the White House was planning to cheer this particular court ruling. But when you think about it, it's not the executive branch's job to be a cheerleader for the judicial or legislative branch. That they're supposed to be nonpartisan.
Yeah, it even goes, this is a really complicated subject, but it's also easy to simplify, I think. Clearly, they already knew what the decision was going to be. This is clear. And I'm not even making a judgment on the decision. I think that when you mention the Supreme Court, I think that's the real key here, is that when you are talking about legislation, when you're talking about the law, when we bring attention to these things, it's more of a fair warning. It's not saying that, let's string up all the homosexuals and put them in prison camps or any of this kind of nonsense, because it's clearly not how we think based on our circle of friends and our family members.
Absolutely.
We obviously reject that, and actually Jesus Christ himself rejected that very thought process. It's very simple.
He did.
Love your neighbor as you love yourself. He didn't say only if they're not gay or not black or not Asian or whatever.
Or transgender.
Exactly.
So this is where the water is muddied on purpose, in order to get guys like that guy fired, right? And to demonize anyone who is simply giving fair warning. Now, as a society, if we want to accept these things, and which we should, obviously, you can't single out your neighbors or family members and disown people and all this kind of thing. You have to accept them and love them as you love yourself. But when the government gets involved and starts legislating things, and also, keep in mind, legislating things that prevent people from having their own personal opinions about things.
Right.
Now what you've done is crossed into an arena where now you're looking for, actually actively looking for judgment on a national level. And we're not saying, okay, don't do these things, or this is bad, or like I said, put people in jail or kill people or get to the extreme, because there are people that think this way, and those are bigots, obviously. But when you have the government participating in this stuff, then now you're treading into Sodom and Gomorrah territory. And I think it's very hard for people to explain or illustrate for people where it is that we're actually coming from with this stuff, without being labeled instantly as you're judgmental, you're a hater, you're a bigot, this kind of thing. When that's clearly not the case. Anyone who knows us personally knows that this is ridiculous. We don't hate anybody.
Exactly.
But that's where it gets complicated, right? And that's where, I just say, hey, it's
people
just
are afraid to even talk about it.
Well, and I'm
clearly
not afraid to talk about it, but it's the whole marriage thing in itself is this whole Pandora's box, when it really doesn't need to be, because personally, I don't believe the government should be involved in marriage at all. But this is a whole other discussion. But then the problem wouldn't exist now, would it?
Well, there's a quote from Chuck Missler, who is one of my heroes, former CEO of Western Digital, United States Naval Academy. Just a well put together guy, couched biblically. He made a comment saying that, if God doesn't judge America, he owes Sodom and Gomorrah an apology.
That's a very good point.
So it's funny you mentioned Satanism and music, because obviously there's a big correlation. Now I'm going to connect this to Motorhead. So follow me here for a second. But this goes back to Nazi Germany.
Yes.
Do you guys know who William Dodd was? Ambassador to Germany in the 1930s.
Okay.
There was a book written by a guy named Eric Larson about William Dodd's experience. The book is called In the Garden of Beasts. Okay? Now you can maybe see where the author's going just with the book title. And it was the story of William Dodd, who was the ambassador to Germany for the United States, who kept reporting back to our government on what was really going on in Nazi Germany. And he is seeing this never before quasi-hypnotized populace becoming mesmerized with Hitler and all of the evil that was going on inside the country before it became famous like it is today. Like we all now know about the death camps. We know about the Lebensborn Project. We know that the Nazis, by and large, escaped to the U.S. They went to NASA. They went to Buenos Aires, Argentina. A lot of people talk about how they retreated to a base that they had established in Antarctica. I'd like to learn more about that before I comment on it, but one of our famous generals, Admiral, forgot his first name, but Admiral Byrd, who led two, we're talking fleets, all right, military ships, thousands of soldiers, led an expedition to Antarctica. And what he wrote in his personal memoirs, like essentially his deathbed confession, was that the Nazis had moved down there and they are in touch with. Now, he thought they were actually aliens from another planet because of their advanced technology. There have been enough researchers on there that surmise that it was probably the same fallen angels, the same lost society of Atlantis rebuilt in Antarctica, which is why we've got the 7 largest nations in the world that protect it militarily. Why are you protecting a landmass with a bunch of ice on it with battleships? I mean, think about that. Byrd ran into the exact same thing at the time. Anyway, going back to World War II, William Dodd is the ambassador. He's reporting back saying there is something like it feels just demonic. This is evil what's happening here. And we obviously know what happened in Nazi Germany. Right after the war, you guys familiar with the Yalta Conference?
I've heard of this.
Yeah, I've heard of that.
Remember, there's a famous picture where Winston Churchill, Joseph Stalin, and Franklin Roosevelt, the 3 leaders of the Allies, the Russians, the British, and the Americans, where they're photographed together in 1945 at the Yalta Conference. You've probably seen pictures of this, correct?
I've seen those pictures, yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So, Myron Fagan, at the time, is a popular director in Hollywood. And, we've made films and we understand how politics and entertainment intertwine at some of the oddest levels. I mean, we can all attest to that. So Myron Fagan is in the prime of his career. He's a director, and he's at this Yalta Conference, or had access to some of the information and the people and the documents that came out of this Yalta Conference. He would later make some records about this, which I'm going to get to in a minute. And his worldview was shattered, like all of ours has been at one point or another, because what he witnessed was that what the 3 Allied leaders really did at Yalta, it wasn't about dividing up the state of Germany and giving part to the Russians, part to the French, part to the Americans, and part to the English. It was really about protecting this evil cabal financed by the Bush, i.e. president's banking family, getting them out of the country and continuing on with the quote-unquote next phase of Albert Pike's plan, which is that famous letter that was written in 1871 to Giuseppe Mazzini, another 33rd degree Freemason. The only reason it ever came to light is because the writer, and back then you communicated by having a horse take the letter to your person. I mean, this is how they were sending this particular message. And that rider had been struck by lightning, which I think might have been God intervening in his own little way to help expose what was going on. But in Albert Pike's letter, he said there's going to be 3 world wars. World War I, we got to get the czars, their power. We're successful in the French Revolution. We were successful with the Civil War in America. Here's what's left. We've got to get World Wars I, World Wars II, and World War III to happen. And exactly as was written in this 1871 letter, the Russians lose their czars, and essentially in comes Lenin, i.e. later on Stalin, the Communist Party, which was supposed to be the result of the end of World War II, is that there'd be these two superpowers, the United States and essentially, the Christians and the communists, and they would eventually be joined in World War III, which obviously has not occurred yet. So Myron Fagan, normal guy in Hollywood, trying to, do his thing, and he sees documents that came out of that conference in which he realized, holy cow, this is, Satan is real. Like, he's at work. These guys praise Lucifer. This he sees in the middle to late 1940s. He then, of course, how this changes a person. That ends up culminating in 2 vinyl records that he put out. And this was in 1967 and 68. You can listen to them on YouTube. I highly recommend you do. And the records were called I think it was something along the lines of the Illuminati and the Council on Foreign Relations. And he had linked the Illuminati to using what some people call the CFR, or the Council on Foreign Relations, to handling a lot of these evil operations. Sometimes people think, it's the Freemasons are the bad guys, or the Bilderbergers are the bad guys, or it's Bohemian Grove, or it's the CFR, but they're actually all linked. They all play a role. There's no one guy that's to blame. The same way that, who do you blame for JFK? Who do you blame for 9/11? They spread it out so there's so much confusion. It messes with people. It makes it hard to see who's the puppeteer behind the scenes. Myron Fagan, nonetheless, figures it out. He puts out this album, or I think it was 3 albums, actually, and you can listen to it today on YouTube, and I suggest anyone go YouTube Myron Fagan, Fagan. And he begins, to summarize these albums, he is exposing this, what he calls a satanic plot, a plot to bring down the United States in the next 50 years or so. So those records come out in 67. And here's another Hollywood insider along the lines of Aaron Russo, who befriended Nicholas Rockefeller and was told that 9/11 was going to happen before it happened. Aaron Russo's the movie producer behind, probably his most famous one was Trading Places with Eddie Murphy. You know his work.
Yep.
And here again, this is another Hollywood insider saying, these people they're not just like your run-of-the-mill bad guy. They believe in a god called Lucifer. I don't know if this is Aaron Russo talking. I don't know if he's real or not, but they sure as hell think he is. They praise him. They worship him. They're literally, they're at his command. So Myron Fagan is, or I should say Aaron Russo was out of the mold of Myron Fagan, who came out and started to expose what he viewed as this satanic plot, which had its roots, when he discovered it, at the conference, at the Yalta Conference, which the world views as this sort of like this victory party for the war in Europe in 1945, of how we're going to divide up those evil Germans. But he ends up finding out that it's actually, well, yeah, we are going to divide up Germany, but the hidden agenda, that the important one is all of these evil mofos that were embedded in the Nazi regime, we're going to get them out of here, and we're going to bring them into all of our countries. So essentially, the Nazis, this occultic force, can continue their quiet coup d'etat, their quiet invasion of the world. And of course, 1963, you flash forward. First of all, Truman, who set up the CIA, which was made up essentially of Nazis. It used to be, during World War II, it was called the Office of Strategic Services, or OSS. Then it was reformed into the Central Intelligence Agency, taking some remnants of the OSS and basically bringing over half of the Nazi intelligence service to the United States. The other half went to the KGB. And this dovetails, I keep using that word today, with Albert Pike's letter, in which these evil world forces are going to be lying behind the curtains of the United States and Russia in this seemingly equal battle of mighty warriors. There's no winner. This Cold War, they're going to use massive military budgets to hyper advance our technology into things that will seem like magic to the regular populace. It protected this evil cabal, kept their names out of the media, and all of the henchmen, all of the people that were in hundreds of millions of people were moved out of Germany and essentially saved. And it's their children now that are the officers in the CIA. So Truman, he had a quote that if he'd known what the CIA was about, he never would have authorized its implementation. Eisenhower then, in his farewell speech, gives the famous, "Do not let the military-industrial complex get more power. They are evil and they are dangerous." He had another famous quote, which is, "I've never seen... So the forces of good and evil are aligned right now like they never have been before." And we think of like a president like Eisenhower's ancient history, but it's actually, if it's from 1900 on, it is super recent in the grand scheme of the spiritual war, which the Bible predicted. All of these little individual codicils, which are all coming true in droves, that this final battle, these forces are aligning. Right after Eisenhower, we get Kennedy. Kennedy, another president, the third one in a row that realizes, holy cow, the CIA is absolutely evil. They're trying to start a war with Cuba. They, without his knowledge, invade Cuba in the Bay of Pigs. They own the media, so he is made to be the super bad guy for not going along with this unannounced invasion and not having air support. So all of these Cuban refugees then ended up hating Kennedy because he, quote unquote, turned their back on them. On the day before he's to meet Khrushchev in Paris for a ceasefire, basically a demilitarization of our nuclear arsenal, that day, unannounced, from a base in which Lee Harvey Oswald used to work, a U-2 spy plane is sent up half-fueled so that it would have to purposely come. It wasn't shot down by the Russians. It had to crash land because it ran out of gas. And that's on the eve of this détente conference. And it's not like Khrushchev and Kennedy are in the know. You have to understand, they themselves are deceived. Next thing you know, conference called off, Cold War heats up. That leads to the Cuban Missile Crisis a few years later. And later in 1963, Kennedy, who's doing two things that evil powers absolutely cannot have, that is, take back the printing of our own money and destroy the Central Intelligence Agency. Those were two things he said, I've got to do. I've got to warn the American people before I leave this office. There's nothing that's more important. And he gave his clearest speech at Columbia University, not the famous one that was at I think it was Washington or New York Press Club, that it starts off for we are opposed around the world by a monolithic conspiracy. So think about what he's talking about, this conspiracy that praises an alternative God. He can't come out and say Satan or devil, because just like today, you get people that roll their eyes and just, shut you. They just stop listening. That was his way of saying, hey, there's something going on here. He is killed in a confusing fashion, which anyone that looks into it now, you'll know there were multiple shooter teams, the same way there were multiple countries involved in 9/11. It's the same playbook over and over and over. So Myron Fagan, that director in Hollywood, he came out with this record in 1967. Flash forward 5 years later. Now, this is how I'm going to connect this to Motorhead. John Todd. You guys familiar with that name?
Yes.
Okay. John Todd, in my opinion, is a hero. This is a guy that grew up in a bloodline family. That means they practiced Satanism. They were demonic. Child sacrifices happened. From birth, these kids are taught that we are the rulers of the planet. We are of the bloodline of Lucifer. He is our God. We are prepping for this final battle. And there are so many Illuminati defectors which say the exact same thing. And here again, I don't think these guys are doing this for credibility, for getting their face on camera, because no one wants to be around them. There's no money in this. He comes out, converts to Christianity, and he starts going to churches, and he gives a lot of taped interviews. Now, he very specifically was in charge of, we've heard of the, I think it was called the Council of 300. Does that ring a bell to you guys?
I think that's correct.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, I think so too.
And this is another one of those front organizations, like the Council on Foreign Relations, like the Bilderberger Group, that are infested with these demonically oriented people, these secret Satan worshipers that wear suits, they speak very well, they're handsome, they're good looking, they're wealthy. And I mean, why would you think anyone like that could be evil? He comes out and goes on a tour through a bunch of churches in the United States in the early 70s. One of his specialties, or one of his specific responsibilities, was transferring Illuminati money from this Council of 300, which were made up of bloodline families, to the guys that were running the record studios, most of them in Los Angeles at the time, to help propel rock music. And he had been doing this from the beginning of the 60s, when rock music really started to come on the scene. And now, this is his story. But listening to RUSS DIZDAR and people that really understand how the demonic side of our world works, this does not surprise me anymore. But he talked about how every single recording studio has inside of its doors somewhere, hidden from the public, but accessed by the top level executives and virtually every artist or performer, that there is a temple inside of the headquarters of essentially every studio that's been making music going back to the 60s. His job was to go to all these different studios. He was already in the family, so he was at the rituals. He testified that basically, if you want to be a rock star, or you're going to have to cut a deal with the devil in some way. And that you're either going to have to give up a child, give up a family member, or give up yourself. But don't sweat it, because the way they look at the world is hell is one big giant party with booze and hookers, and it's going to be a blast, and you're going to be totally taken care of here on earth and in hell. They don't view hell as a place of torment like a Bible believer does. And they grow up. This is what they're taught from day one. So to them, there's nothing strange. If you aren't raised in one of those families, it may seem strange to us. But if you're taught from day one, my kid right now happens to believe, well, not my kid, doesn't. Well, actually, he might. But we all know, for instance, kids will believe in Santa Claus and flying reindeer. Okay? That's programmed in them until they get to a certain age, and then they're like, okay, that wasn't real. But if you're programmed into whatever it is that is your reality, and that's all you know your whole life, and you're never told anything different. In fact, what you do see is the fact that, wow, my family who were related to all the popes and were related to royalty and were related to the richest people in the world, we really do run the show. I'm glad I'm on the winning side. And our God, Lucifer, the way they look at it is there was a misunderstanding in heaven, and Lucifer was actually the good guy. Jesus wants to enslave us. Lucifer wanted to give us knowledge and enlighten us, illuminate us, teach us how to live longer through genetic engineering. These are the things that were taught inside of John Todd's family, and certainly hundreds at this point, maybe even thousands of defectors out of these Illuminati / occultic families that all had their origins back in Nazi Germany. So where this connects to bands like Motorhead and why there's such this prevalence of Satanism in rock music, even in, obviously with Motorhead and metal, I mean, the dudes just wear it on their tattoos and their t-shirts. And he goes, but what John Todd was explaining, and he was mentioning the pop artists of the day, which would be the equivalent of our Justin Biebers and our Taylor Swifts and our Britney Spears, was that, one, these kids grow up in these families. And, for Britney Spears and I think Taylor Swift and Christina Aguilera, they came out of, if you know Walt Disney World, these kids they grew up in the Disney, so did Justin Timberlake, grew up in the Disney family. They've been on TV since they were little kids. He himself was a known pedophile and, again, a 33rd degree Freemason. And do some research on how many children go missing at Disney World. It will shock you. I think that's one of the most unsafe places in the world. But again, they own the media, and they're only, it's a fantasy land of witches and magic. That is the demonic world.
And for anybody who maybe doesn't have a kid, if you have a kid and you watch the Disney Channel and go through the Disney ecosystem of programs and music and all that stuff, and you don't think there's something a little off, you're not paying attention.
There would
just
be
the way they program your kids.
Yeah,
you watch it with the consumer. It starts with the consumerism. You got to buy this and buy that, and it's like if you think there's not something deeper going on there, you're not paying attention.
So, going back to finishing out the John Todd, connecting that to Motorhead, and I don't know about Motorhead specifically. I think I'm talking about. It's hard because I love rock music, man. I really do. But its connections to Satanism all come from Nazi Germany, these Illuminati bloodline families that moved the United States. They've been funding not just Hollywood, but the music industry. And what would happen at these rituals, at these temples inside of a music headquarters studio, is that a curse or would be put on an album. So they would literally have a ritual for this album. The artist is there. They've already literally pledged their soul to Satan. And the prayer that they do, it's a dark prayer, is that that every single vinyl, or today it would be a CD or DVD, that it gets infested with a demon. Now, this is John Todd telling this story. This is not me telling the story. And that is one way that demons, which the Bible warns against, he goes, don't have icons, don't have all these certain things, don't praise other things that you bring in because you're allowing demons into your life. These demonic powers certainly believed, they went to the trouble of having a ritual every time a new record was released, of putting a hex on it, saying, all right, any of you billion demons, I don't know how this works, we want one demon to travel with each vinyl record, and we're going to get demons into every single house. And that's why you heard Christian ministers, I think they just gave up on this, late 70s, early 80s, trying to hang on to that spiritual war, saying, get rid of your rock records, throw them out, because you literally are living with demons if you've got these. And the performers today, certainly, they don't even hide it anymore. It's like they're coming out. It's like it's cool to praise Satan. It's cool to be a Wiccan. It's cool to be a witch. And this isn't folklore. So, I mean, we just went from Nazi Germany to Myron Fagan to John Todd, who, by the way, was thrown in prison in 1970, early mid-70s, and was never heard from again. You know, I'm sure he lived, but not really.
Right. I was going to ask what happened to him. I thought that's what it said.
No, he's doing well.
Yeah. Yeah.
And what you get today, or the way it manifests itself, is how many of these stars, like a Britney Spears, at some point has a freaking meltdown, especially the ones that grew up with it. Yeah. I mean, she goes shaving her head. She writes songs about trying to disconnect herself
Look at
from...
Miley Cyrus, for Christ's sake.
Yeah, she's... Wow.
Think about Michael Jackson.
Yeah.
What was he involved in? He certainly... I mean, these people just get completely weird. And I think there's more to it than just doing it because you want to attract more fans. I think a lot of them will tell you, like the Tila Tequilas of the world, that, you know, I run in the same circles as these guys. When a guy like Wayne Brady runs out of his house waving a gun saying they are trying to kill me, and then you've got his friend, who's the comedian, black guy that went to Africa, Dave Chappelle.
Dave Chappelle, yeah.
He's like, guys, I'm not crazy, okay? And he's saying this in code to the studio audience, and on that show, you know, in the director's studio, who's the British guy that asks all the questions of those famous people. Doesn't matter. He's on the show, and he's, again, like Eisenhower, he can't come out and say devil, Satan, but he's trying to get the audience to think. He's like, think about this, guys. Guys like Wayne Brady are not crazy. Guys like me, we are not crazy. Why do you think I just would go to Africa? Okay, it's not because I'm crazy. And he goes, you know what, though? Even if you don't get it, you will soon. Believe, this is Dave Chappelle talking. Yeah. He's like, it was ominous. He's like, oh, you'll get it soon.
Yeah, I remember that because I'm a huge Dave Chappelle fan, dude.
Yeah, me too. Yeah. Loved his stuff.
Huge. And that was the story, right, is that he had a mental breakdown.
Yep.
And had to go check himself in somewhere, quote unquote. And then he surfaces on that, you know, on that show, and he starts doing commentaries and like, yo, no, man, I ain't crazy.
Yeah, every time I go look at a Dave Chappelle or Randy Quaid or someone that has been, quote unquote, labeled as crazy, they don't sound crazy to me. They're all kind of telling the same story.
Well, we've all been labeled crazy, so.
Very true.
Maybe we're crazy, and that's why we don't think the other crazies are crazy.
Maybe this is what crazy is.
It's the Manson philosophy. I'm not crazy. The world is crazy. I'm normal.
Actually, I don't want to say anything that praises or makes Charles Manson look good.
That was a joke.
No, but I was watching this documentary on the 60s and then the 70s, and there was a lot of Charles Manson stuff because that's when all these serial killers just invaded the USA, like out of nowhere. The Ted Bundys, all these famous killers started to get news. But if you ever listen to what Charles Manson says, it's actually as if he's obviously super intelligent, and I'm sure he's demonized, or obviously he's evil. And I did find it interesting that one of the girls that was in his cult, who was not involved in the LaBianca murders, you know, the famous murders that happened in Hollywood where Roman Polanski's girlfriend was killed, and the LaBiancos, that famous rich couple, and a few other people were killed. It was a total satanic ritual. You can helter-skelter, and the pentagrams carved into them. A lot of those pictures didn't make the public. But there was one follower of his cult who was at the trial every day. She was one of the girls that was singing on her way to court, which was made sort of famous by the news. That same girl, a few years later, tried to kill Gerald Ford, the president.
Right, I remember reading that.
What was her name?
Twiggy Fromm?
Yeah, it was something like Puffy or...
I think it's Twiggy Fromm.
Something like that.
Yeah, was it Fromm? Good. So either they're whacked out to begin with, or they're just agents of evil carrying out different plans. What was her name?
I keep hearing a bird.
Yeah, who's got a bird?
Yeah, where's the bird? You keep hearing that? Is that at your house, dude?
You know what? It is. I've got this window open. I just shut it.
I'm like, good. Okay, I thought maybe I was going crazy.
Good, we got 5 minutes left. Now there's no bird.
Squeaky Fromm. Lynette Squeaky Fromm.
Squeaky.
Squeaky.
That's
okay.
right.
I had Fromm right.
Yeah, but it is strange, though, you bring that up, because the serial killers kind of came out of nowhere. Didn't it kind of all start with
you're right.
like Ed Gein?
You're right.
Didn't
I mean,
it kind of
yeah,
start
'cause
with him?
with a lot of that stuff, I tend to believe that the reason why we think that things are happening in greater numbers nowadays than they have in the past is the global news cycle, the 24-hour news cycle. That I think this stuff always happened. We just didn't, in many circumstances, I think these kind of things always happened, and we're not connected to the rest of the world. But with what we've brought up on the show today, and my knowledge of those years, because I was growing up in them, you guys have brought up some great points.
Yeah, it's, with the news thing, Ed Gein actually was quite a long time ago, and he was making costumes out of waitresses a long time ago.
Yeah.
Oh, was he one of the Silence of the Lambs killer was based on this amalgamation of like 4 or 5 serial killers?
No, Texas.
Was
Chainsaw
he one of
Massacre,
them?
what? Texas
Texas
Chainsaw Massacre, Leatherface.
Yep.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
That was based on like a real thing?
There's actually a sweet metal band called Ed Gein. Just thought I'd throw that out there. Anyway.
How crazy is that?
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's a good point, Howard. Is this... Are we just noticing something because the news?
No, I think with the occult stuff that you're talking about,
just,
and this link back to the potential doorways, pathways that were opened by the extreme occultism.
It seems like it seems like it goes in phases, though. Go back far enough. Look at the Inquisition, right? That was, probably one of the most brutal. Look at the 50 million people that Rome murdered for their beliefs. It's just like it's like in phases. This is the modern day phase that we're in right now.
But we were quiet for a long time.
Yeah,
we were good.
It's
several hundred years.
But I don't know. It depends how you. I think there's phases all throughout history of all this kind of evil, slaughtering, murdering. You look at any period in history, I think there's an example of it.
When you look at a lot of when you look at it, and again, we didn't live through it, so we only know from the history books, and we know that the history books are not 100% accurate.
Well, that's true.
But you look at the Inquisition, the Crusades, a lot of things like that, and while you may not agree with what they were trying to accomplish, there's at least some logic behind what they were trying to do.
The Crusades, maybe, not the Inquisition.
Yeah, well,
but I understand.
I'm using it loosely.
Yeah,
I'm being very
yeah.
loose with it. Okay, but the thing is, in the middle of the 20th century, things just became the reason is evil.
Yeah.
It just took on really a blatantly in your face.
I see what you're
There's no
saying.
other explanation.
Yeah.
How do you explain Manson?
Yeah, there's no cause.
There's no cause. There's
Right.
nothing. There's no agenda. What's his agenda? To become God.
Yeah, that's
His agenda is to be worshipped.
yeah,
And you look at Jim Jones and David Koresh and all the serial killers, and then you bring up that link with the occultism, that the second explosion of occultism in the 60s.
yeah. That was something that Russ Dizdar brought up.
There was a time when occultism and reading horoscopes and crystal balls, it was outlawed all over the world. In fact, the Inquisition, the way it was taught to me was that it was this very evil time. But if you actually look at the particulars of the Inquisition, in a lot of ways, I'm not condoning it in any way, but it was a battle between Christians and Satanists. And in that particular battle, the Christians, and I don't think they did this the right way, basically wiped out the Satanists of the day. These are the and it leaked
but they-
over
but
into
they
even the
wiped out
Salem
so
witch
many
trials.
Well, that's how it's
Yeah.
usually taught.
No, it's not taught like that at all. But the Bible, God is not afraid to kill. He's not afraid to have people that praise Satan not be around anymore. And I think Christians of the day maybe took that a little bit too far. And it's right after the Inquisition when all of a sudden the whole demonic army goes underground. They go completely, they get out of the world. They start to turn the devil into sort of like a joke. Flash forward 300-400 years later, most of the world, at least most of the United States at least, doesn't believe he's a real entity. And they said in the very last days he'd come out and he'd make himself known. He'd start to show himself. His seed would be on the earth, the Nephilim, i.e. these genetically engineered creatures, which I think, frankly, are the same aliens that, Ancient Alien Show talks about. Those, it's not really aliens from another planet. These are just the demons from forever, just repackaged. And they're coming out now. And again, that's another thing that started in modern history. Really, in 1947, we've got this alien sighting at Roswell. And since then, and it's blowing up, even in the last 10 years, 5 years, the sightings have blown up to cataclysmic proportions. It's like you can't deny something is up there. Right at the same time that these ritualistic murders are happening, then you got guys like RUSS DIZDAR saying, get ready, man. There is literally a secret army in this world that's about to unleash hell.
Yeah.
I don't doubt it.
I hear you, brother. Well, we're going to have to continue this next week. So we'd like to say thank you from all of us at Down the Rabbit Hole. Kenny, thanks for running the board, brother. DiBiase, thanks for hanging out with me here. And Hooper, thanks for calling in. We just want you guys to remember that Jesus is the only way off this rock. This is Howard. I'm saying goodnight from Down the Rabbit Hole. We'll be back next week. Until then, take care and God bless you all.